It's been a busy week, Chris Walby. Western Final set to go Sunday afternoon right here in Winnipeg at IG Field. Thanks for joining us on Bonfire Sports. Darrin bombing, the legendary Chris Walby right there, as always. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for liking and subscribing on YouTube. And we've been getting great response too, Chris, on social media as of late. Not just Twitter, but Instagram as well. Phenomenal turnout for our first Instagram contest. Big congratulations to Brianna Valerie and her fiance. He subscribed on YouTube, so they got 5 bonus entries. She entered on Instagram, and, well, they're going to the game. They got some primo lower bowl seats right around the 20-yard line. They'll be able to see the Blue Bombers bench. Shout out to Lucas at the CFL for those tickets, and congratulations to them. They're going to be amongst 30,000 plus. Chris, before we get into the X's and O's, the lineups, and everything else, as we always do here on Game Day Winnipeg, let's talk about the atmosphere expected. A little bit of a chilly afternoon for a Western Final.
I don't think it's going to be that bad. I mean, they're calling for snow. I love it. As a former player, it always was exciting when you get to play this time of the year when you got snowflakes and snow coming down. I mean, it's going to be a little crisp. But having said that, you don't even think about that. I mean, I remember playing and we put the Vaseline and heat on our arms and do anything we could because, we had the tradition back then where we wouldn't wear sleeves. And, it got cold sometimes. And I still remember I had grease on my arms and some guy that I was playing against, he put thumbtacks in his gloves. And as he was going across my arms, he was just ready to just basically rip my arms apart. And they made him take his gloves off. And, they came over to me and they were going, "What about you, man?" He says, "You're greased up." I said, "Hey, I'm just fat. I'm sweating." So he let me go. But, yeah, it's crazy. So, you know what? We had a week off. We got to watch the Calgary, Saskatchewan, Hamilton, Montreal game. I missed it, man, for 1 week. I mean, we've been doing this every week for the whole season, and that was a really interesting buy. But I got to enjoy by watching both games, watching Saskatchewan, as we say. Boy, I tell you what, you're looking at that one. We're going to get into the X and O's, but the Bombers are ripe. They're ready to go, man. They're rocking and rolling and healthy, and we'll have to talk about a couple maybes that'll play. You think he might? I'm not sure if he will, but he probably will because, we're talking about Andrew Harris, so go ahead.
Andrew Harris. Yeah, you teed it up, Chris Walby. All eyes will be on 33 this week, and it's been interesting watching the week go by. It was roughly 45 days when he stepped on the practice field on Wednesday. And he even admitted afterwards, as we got a chance to talk to Andrew Harris for the first time in nearly 7 weeks, that he did not run at all during that time. He said 50 days. It was like 46, 47, whatever it was, to not run at all. He said he was in the gym and in the pool and doing Jacob's ladder in the facility at IG Field, working tirelessly with trainers and, the doctors and the medical staff. This is just how I see it, Chris. He's 34 years old, okay?
Yeah.
The Bombers are likely to win this game and go to the Grey Cup. But I feel like they've just been sitting him down, biding their time, and he's probably said, "Look, Mike, coach, I'm okay sitting down here while I recover from this injury, but when it comes to playoffs, you're going to have to, steal my shoes to not have me out on the field." I don't even know if that would stop Andrew Harris right now.
No.
This could be his last game. I don't think it will be, but it could be. How do you keep him out of the lineup? And that's the feather in the Blue Bombers hat, Chris. You can go to Brady Oliveira. You can go to Johnny Augustine. Great 1-2 punch in their own right. You even have Nick Dembski as a kind of fail-safe third option.
Absolutely.
So dress them all and see what happens. But I think you would have to really fight Andrew Harris to not be on the field on Sunday.
Well, I think you hit it on the head, and part of me is thinking, why would he sit? And the only reason he would sit is if the club felt seriously that he would probably not be 100% and would not be able to contribute. Because as you mentioned, the two guys you mentioned before, Johnny Augustine and Brady Oliveira, have done well in his replacement. But having said that, Andrew brings a whole new dynamic when he's back in that offense. Not even so much the fact that he runs so well, great blocker, and knows his assignments. Like, he just knows if there's a blitz coming, he knows how to pick it up all the time. He's very rarely wrong. And I agree with you, DB. If this is, I don't say it's his last game. But I would say this. I think he thinks about it. What if something happens, Saskatchewan upsets, and that would be an upset, the Bombers. He would not want to be the guy sitting on his sideline saying, I never even had a chance to play in that game. So, yeah, you're going to see 33 out there. And the adrenaline. Adrenaline is another thing, too. It's like, you get jacked up, you're ready to go. And sometimes you can't feel it, And, I remember, when I played my last game in Winnipeg, I didn't even want – I was the guy that didn't want to play because it was a meaningless game, and yet I went and got a shot in my knee to kill the pain and ended up hurting myself. I don't know. He's probably ready, as you say, Jacob's Ladder, running probably a ton of bike work with trainer Alcacher.
Right.
If he says he's ready, then I believe he's ready. Now, they probably didn't practice him Friday because why? He knows the offense. Yeah. They've been doing this. This is O'Shea's thing, mantra the whole year has been, I will sit out the guys. I just want them ready game day. At the beginning of the year, I was against this. It's like, no, it's going to hurt. Well, I stand corrected. I say this, on our Bonfire Sports. I guess there is a new philosophy of keeping players healthy and be able to perform at peak performance to come game time.
It's interesting you mentioned philosophy. Some of Andrew Harris's teammates described him as having a PhD of experience in Canadian football. So, does he need to practice? No. And that philosophy the Blue Bombers have of resting guys when they need it, not pushing them through practice, knowing that they will show up and play. Mike O'Shea stated it, pretty clearly this week, as he really has every week for 7 years, that it's hard for his team to not get up for a game. This whole rest versus rust debate, I don't see that being a factor in any way, shape, or form. The way I've described it, the screws are tight. The Blue Bombers know, and I mean mentally their screws are tight. They know what to do when that gun fires, when that whistle blows, when that ball is kicked off, when that ball is snapped. They know their job, they know their role, and the way Mike O'Shea always puts it is you're not playing for you're not playing for just the W on your helmet or the blue and gold on your chest. You're playing for the guy next to you, and he's playing for the guy next to him, and they're all playing for each other. That's the motivation they have to really step out on the field and from week to week play their best football. And we've seen a lot of that. We've seen that clearly in 2021. We'll mention this. Speaking of guys not practicing and ensuring their bodies are right, Jackson Jeffcoat is officially a game time decision or officially questionable for the West Final, as is Mike Miller. I expect both of those guys to play. Both of them did enough, in my eyes, in practice that they're going to be good to go. This is the really impressive thing. The Blue Bombers have their ideal lineup for the most important game of the year. Yeah. Everybody's available. And, well, if you're the Saskatchewan Roughriders, I think you got to, find something to turn the tides your way. I don't think you can go head-to-head against this Blue Bombers team and just win. You got to find, a wrinkle or an X factor or an intangible that's going to swing the game in Saskatchewan's favor.
There is an X factor that affects both teams, and that's going to be the weather. I watched the Western final today the Vanier Cup, where Western beat the University of Saskatchewan. I think that's where they are. That's right. What a great game. But the field conditions in Quebec City were awful. I mean, there was ice on the field. Guys are slipping all over. That is the intangible you have to take into consideration. It's calling for snow. It's calling for it's always windy here. So it's going to be interesting to see how these guys handle the elements and the punting and the field position and all those other things. Cody Fajardo likes to take off. The quarterback for Saskatchewan likes to use his legs. Second leading rusher for Saskatchewan. Actually, against Calgary, he was the leading rusher in that semifinal win. So I fully expect the Bombers are going to try and keep him in that pocket. But I know as an old ex-O lineman, when it's really slippery out there, it gives the offensive line and pass pro a little bit of a break because these guys can't really get off the field. But mind you, the footwear, and I've heard they've done a fantastic job at IG Field, getting that field ready every day, brushing it, making sure that it's at prime position, for this game. So, but I always think the weather is one thing that you can't control that might control what you do.
It's amazing to think that if this game was 48 hours earlier, it would be absolutely beautiful, quote unquote, winter conditions, even though we're officially still in fall here in southern Manitoba. But this cold front is coming in. It will strike Monday and Sunday night through the nighttime hours. So the winds are going to be significant. They expect gusts between 50 and 70 kilometers an hour. Chris, we know playoff games are always going to rely on the kicking game, not just field goals, but kickoffs as well, and kick coverages. Special teams, no doubt, will be a huge factor in this game. You mentioned Cody Fajardo and his ability to do it with his arm and his legs. Duke Williams, as you see on the ticker there, also a game-time decision. Toe is bothering him. But the Saskatchewan Roughriders have a ton of offensive weaponry in the receiving core, in Kean Schaefer-Baker, one of your favorites, I know, Chris, in Shaq Evans, in Brendan Lenius, another Canadian. But then William Powell and Cody Fajardo, and they like to use fullbacks in Saskatchewan as well. They like to run the RPO, or the run pass option. I'm watching the Blue Bombers in practice this week, Chris. The defensive ends and the linebackers practicing discipline to not bite too early on the quarterback going to the edge or the tailback going to the edge, because that run pass option gives Cody Fajardo the ability to either give it to Powell, take it himself, or even throw the ball downfield. So discipline is going to be critical for this Blue Bombers defense.
And one of the things that you just hit on, and I'm going to expand on just a touch more, is when you got a quarterback that likes to utilize his legs to stretch the pocket from sideline to sideline, that puts the defensive end, whether it's Willie Jefferson, Jonathan Kongbo, or Jackson Jeffcoat, whoever's over there, in a bind. You don't want to let them get outside of you, right? So if that means now I've got to make sure I'm on the outside to contain, which opens up the run game. It really does. So if I'm Saskatchewan, I want to stretch that field side to side to get those ends coming up a little wider to allow the running game of William Powell or whoever's going to carry the ball for Saskatchewan to exploit that guard tackle, opening. So, they didn't run the ball a whole lot against the Bombers. The Bombers did a great job in the 2 games we played. But I want to say this. I'm looking at the roster right now, and I went back and looked at the roster from September 11th, the Banjo Bowl, the last time these two teams met. There's 8 different players on the defense right now for Saskatchewan. 8. Ed Gainey didn't play. AC Leonard didn't play. They got 2 new guys in the corner and a big big defensive corner, Jeremy Clark and Damon Webb at the halfback. You've got their Micah Teets is out. They've got a new kid in there from South Florida, Nigel Harris. But I think the big one will be, and we talked about Duke Williams with the turf toe, AC Leonard with a hip, 50-50. That guy I'm blown away. Listen, I'm not trying to be a homer here, but I'm just going to say the guy had 11 sacks, 41 tackles, 2 forced fumbles, and an interception. Not an all-star.
Right.
I just kind of, and this is where I get into that thing where, I think that the fact that he did that, failed to provide a urine test earlier in the year really hurt, and that's it's almost
and
like
then, and don't forget he got an extra game because he was disrespectful to that doping official.
Oh, don't tell me that didn't affect.
That's almost as egregious as the refusing to provide a sample.
Well, and that's the thing, right? So I mean, it tells you anything how you conduct yourself during the year, no matter what your you put up your stats. If you got that little asterisk by your name for doing something silly or stupid, if we could put it that way, it's going to affect you come time for voting for All-Stars and stuff like that. So, But anyway, I think he's got a thing to think.
Did you know this? Did you know this about AC Leonard? He did not speak to media in Saskatchewan all season long. Turned it down every time. Never spoke to reporters.
Did not know that.
Nothing. The only time he spoke publicly this season was to apologize following that doping infraction or the sample infraction, I guess, providing the sample, and the disrespect of the doping official. So, here's the thing. Like, if it's the National Hockey League, Chris, Connor McDavid can't win the Hart Trophy if Leon Draisaitl is scoring 2 points a game and leads the league in scoring. Like, not everybody can be an all-star. Not everybody can be the most outstanding defensive player. When you got AC Leonard, you got Jared Davis, you got Jefferson and Jeffcoat, you got, Jonathan Woodard, you got, so many talented defensive linemen in the CFL. Not everybody can be included in that. So I think, the voters spoke. And when you're part of a truly historic defense here in Winnipeg, you got to go with the words of Adam Bighill in training camp back in July. His words, our front seven is scary. And every single team that has played the Blue Bombers this year, Chris, they start and finish with how dangerous that front is.
And we know how good they are. And the fact that this is a team that gets stronger as the game goes on. I mean, the 2 games against Saskatchewan, 37-0 in the second half combined for both games. They get after you. I do like the fact that you mentioned the other kid by the name of Jonathan Woodward, the other defensive end for Saskatchewan.
Good player.
These are, both these teams have outstanding defensive ends. I think the thing that really gives us the thing is obviously Adam Big Hill in the middle. And we got strength right down the pipe. And I call the pipe the tunnel. The tunnel of terror. I'm just going to make that right now. Tunnel of terror when you got, Stephen Richardson, Jake Thomas, Adam Big Hill, and a guy that just knocks you on your can in Brandon Alexander at that safety position. That when you got those guys straight down there, good things happen. And this is a phenomenal defense. And we always say that offense wins games, defense wins championships. And I fully expect the defense to come out roaring tomorrow.
Chris, this is my question for you as somebody who was in the trenches for nearly 2 decades during your Hall of Fame CFL career. There's strategy in football, and then there's a playoff game in nasty weather where it's 2 heated rivals, biting and clawing at each other all game long. When does it switch from strategy and game planning to just a battle of wills between men?
Well, that's a great point. I mean, I think that, when I know the one thing about playoffs, it's do or die, right? It's one game. And I was listening to Craig Dickinson, the head coach of Saskatchewan. He says, I told the guys that on Wednesday or Thursday was our last practice at their field at Mosaic. And some of the guys were like, yeah, that's right, because it hadn't even hit them yet. And they said the same thing. He told the guys, he said, listen, we either go on to Hamilton to practice or we pack our bags and go home. I'm leaving it to you gentlemen to figure out where we go. I think this is going to be a different Saskatchewan team. You mentioned they didn't have Duke. They didn't have Shaq Evans. I think they've got a pretty decent offensive line. I know that Brett Boyko does. He's an interesting cat, that guy, right tackle for Saskatchewan. Yeah. Went down to the NFL for a couple of years. He just basically was a practice roster guy. And then he went to BC, and he was a bust.
Yeah.
And then he
that
came
whole
home.
line was a mess, right?
Yeah, and that might have been a combination of a lot of things. But anyway, he started playing guard. Now he's back at tackle, where I think the big guy should be. He's going to have his hands full too, right? I mean, obviously, he's going against a great defense. But obviously, when I think about it too, these guys are almost like the Bomber offensive line when they practice against, Jeffcoat, Kabongo, and all those other guys. They practice against A.C. Leonard and Woodard and all the guys they have there. And they're really high on this other kid. I was watching a special, this Pete Robertson. The backup defensive end who had just a whale of a game against Calgary. And I was listening to the guy giving a shout-outs to who he thought played very well against Calgary. And they kept talking about number 93, so I'll be watching him tomorrow to see what happens as well.
That Calgary-Saskatchewan game, Chris, was frankly a dumpster fire.
Yeah,
Both of those teams did everything they could to give the game away, and Saskatchewan just happened to fall into a victory. I asked Cody Fajardo at walkthrough at IG Field about, he's been very open through this season especially, but really his whole career. When he plays bad, he'll say, hey, that's on me. That's pretty good leadership for a second-year starter at quarterback in the CFL. But I asked him if he plays his best football maybe with that bad taste in his mouth. I expect Cody Fajardo to have a really good football game. Obviously, ball security will be paramount, especially when it gets cold, and especially when you got Stephen Richardson and the long arms of Willie Jefferson and Jackson Jeffcoat swatting at the ball, and you run an RPO where it's like, am I keeping it? Am I dishing it off? Am I passing it? The ball could get, jumbled out and loose if it gets a little chillier. The hands get a little bit chilly.
Yeah. And the ball gets a little slippery,
Yeah, but Cody Fajardo just talked about being an underdog his whole career. California state champion in high school, 0 Division I offers coming out of high school, had to really kind of fight and claw his way, and then wait 6 years in the CFL before starting a game as a professional. He's got a lot of weapons around him. Sure, they're going up against a very good Blue Bombers defense, but to me, Chris, if the Riders win this game, they need the big boys up front to battle with their will and outwill the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, which will be a tough test. But Cody Fajardo needs to beat this Blue Bombers defense. That's what has to happen.
Yeah, it all comes down to the battle of the trenches. They've got to win that battle. They did not in the 2 games previous against the Bombers. I think they have an opportunity. I think if they run the football, and I was listening to Matt Dunnigan talk about a preview of the West Final, and I thought he brought up a very interesting point. He said the one team that legitimately beat the Bombers was about the third game of the season when Toronto Argonauts came in, or they went to Toronto and they beat Toronto, or Toronto beat them, and they ran the ball down the bomb right through the middle. Now, obviously, I don't believe Stephen Richardson was in at that time, and I'm not saying one guy makes your defense. But having said that, he said, Saskatchewan, you need to take a look at what they did, what they found, because that's what you have to do. You got to look for chinks in the armor. Mm-hmm. There are none in the Bombers, but I remember this. The Bombers were giving up a lot of yards running the football. They're number one against the pass, though. Very tough to throw the ball. They've only given up, 6 passing touchdowns all year. It's incredible. So, I mean, I just think that I think this with the new guys they got, with Cody Fajardo, who I like him as a person. Saskatchewan loves this guy. He is a guy that really has to be the guy that catalysts the straw that stirs that drink. If he comes out and throws 4 interceptions, there's not a whale of a chance to win this football game. I don't even know.
He throws 2.
What are the underdog? How much are the underdog right now? 11 or 6?
It opened at 6. I think it's around 8 right now. Who knows by the time kickoff happens? Could be 9.
I mean, that's the thing. But like you said, they like the underdog role. Good for them. But you also know that when you go into a game, and I remember going into games in playoffs thinking we're going to win, and something happens and we don't end up winning. We don't play like we can. And we have, Eastern Final against the Baltimore Stallions. We played them at the home here for the East Final Goalie Cup. We lost, I think, 12-10 or 13-12 or something like that. We did not have our best game. Yeah. It just
that was a good team, though.
They were a good team. We should have beat them, but anyway, that's water under the bridge. I'm just saying that's an example. But we were ready to play that game. We had a great team. It's just the fact that sometimes things happen. You're right. Baltimore, were they good? Absolutely. Were they coached? Yeah. Don, what's his name?
Don Matthews,
yeah. Just a genius. He was the first guy that did this. No hitting during the week. Practices.
A true innovator. Yeah. He created that cover linebacker, that dime back, that strong side linebacker. He created that. Let's get a big guy off the field, get a speedster, a DB in there, and opposing offenses are going to have a lot of trouble. Like, a very big innovator, and I think it was 16 players. The final year of the Baltimore Stallions, or the Baltimore CFLers, whatever they were called, that final season, the next year, 16 players on that team made the NFL.
Oh, yeah. Listen, they were good. And I remember, he also did something, and I believe he started in Baltimore as well, and he was bringing 11 guys.
Right.
He was bringing everybody and saying, if you can beat us, get the ball away. It's risk versus reward.
Yeah, and that's what Chris Jones did, too.
There was nobody in the center. Guys started running, seam routes on him, and they started beating him, forcing him to go back a little bit. But he was killing offenses with his schemes, He'd bring them, drop them. He was the first guy, I think, that I saw would do that thing where he'd bring the end 2 steps up, much like Willie Jefferson, roll him into flat, and the guy would get Anwar Stewart was the guy for Montreal Alouettes who did that and caught a couple interceptions. So, yeah. And that's our kudos to Don Matthews. I liked him. He was a great coach. And, he was good for the CFL.
No question about that. But we will digress. And as we look towards the West Final here on Bonfire Sports, Chris, the kicking game is the one area, in my opinion, that could be the Achilles heel of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Look, it's playoff football. It's cold. The Blue Bombers' offense is well-rounded and balanced. They got the best player in the league in MOP frontrunner Zach Collaros as the trigger man. Buck Pierce, no doubt, has some extra tricks up his sleeve when it comes to the play calling in the West Final. But the reality is, sometimes you're not going to get into the end zone. The Blue Bombers are going to need Sergio Castillo to hit the easy kicks and hit from maybe 40 with the wind from left to right, or, into his face. Do you see that the same way I see it, that it could be a weakness of this Blue Bombers club?
No, I don't think so anymore. I wrote a stat down here that the Bombers before Sergio, or even with Sergio, were 23 of 37. He's 7 of 9. He missed 1. He was 3 for 4 last week. Mm-hmm. He's a very confident kicker. I mean, he says he lives in Amarillo, Texas in the offseason. He's this is his first, but I'll give you one point. It's his first professional playoff game. I found that very interesting, But I just think he's one of those guys. He said, I just go through my mechanics and I kick the football. I don't think so. As a matter of fact, I think he's going to be fine. The guy that I'm worried about is the guy that punts the ball, because with the wind, the best punter, I mean, seriously, Bob Cameron would drop the ball a different way when kicking into the wind to get distance. Because if you get that ball, he'll tell you he kicked one super high one time. The wind brought it back, and it was like 9 yards behind him. So, you can't do that. Now, I'm not kidding. That was the actual kick. So, I think that Mark the Legio is going to have to I think he's going to have a big game. Really get some quality kicks out there, get good coverage. They're going to get against the guy that averaged 39 yards of punt return last week for Saskatchewan in Jamal Morrow, who had and then he had a returned field goal. And I saw the block, and it was done by the, what's his name? The kid, Jeremy Clark, the DB from Saskatchewan. And it was a horrible call. Should never have been a clipping. So he should have had a touchdown on the missed field goal. Mm-hmm. But and they didn't challenge it. And he actually was on. I was listening to the coach talking, and he said they went to the official after. He said if you would have challenged it, you probably would have won. So it just goes to tell you, right? It's crazy. Those little, I can't remember. I think it was Cal said the game is decided by 5 plays. Right. And then you got to make sure you control the ball. And if you're going to lose the turnover battle, it's over. So they got to win a turnover battle. So I always get jacked about football, but I always get more jacked playoffs, and I always get even more jacked when it's Saskatchewan, because I love this rivalry.
No question. And there's going to be 30,000 plus there. And the Blue Bombers have even stated that they haven't sold a ton of tickets to Rough Rider fans. It's been Manitobans that are going to pack the stands for the West Final. I think that's a great thing. Now, this Blue Bombers team, Chris, they are built extremely impressively. And, to beat this team, to your point about Cal and the 5 plays, and of course turnovers will factor in.
Yep.
I was a little bit surprised to hear Rough Riders head coach Craig Dickinson speak to the media here in Winnipeg and say, it's almost polar opposite of the way Mike O'Shea speaks. He said, hey, we know we're probably outmatched. We know it's going to be tough. He essentially admitted that they need a break to go their way. They need a play or a big play to go their way. Yeah. If Winnipeg just plays clean, smart football, they should win this game. That's why the point spread is what it is. That's why the Blue Bombers are heavy favorites. If you were suiting up against this Blue Bombers team, Chris, as a veteran, what would your message be to the guys when, you got the cards stacked against you?
They love that. Everybody loves that because it's 60 minutes. It's 60 plays. We used to say run 15 plays a quarter offensively. That's, basically 60 in a game. Just take care of those plays every quarter. Make sure that you take that next play and make that your best play. That was the mentality. They're not going, and I know it's almost like I was reading some of the comments coming out of Regina today, and they were like, "Oh, they're just setting up for the excuses for if they lose." Or, but you're right, because O'Shea and Craig Dickinson do not address the media the same way.
Polar opposite.
I saw today they're asking about. No, I don't want to get into the personnel. Where Craig Dickinson talks, Duke Williams got a toe. He couldn't work last week. He had to walk upfield. He's got a hip. He's 50-50.
If these guys are out, these guys are in.
Yeah.
Pure
and we said, don't worry. He said, we'll get 45 guys on the roster. You just got to love the way the guy works, right? So I guarantee this team is stinging not only from the 2 games they played earlier in the year, and I mentioned already that there's, 8 different guys on defense that weren't in that last game. But I think the fact is they were 1 play away from going to the Cup in 2019. Remember, we watched that game. You and I were doing it. And for TSN, and Fajardo hit the uprights with a wide open Keenan Moore in the end zone. Yeah. That's just karma, buddy. And they know that.
That's what runs through a quarterback's mind over and over and over again when, his head hits the pillow at night. And he even talked about it at his media availability in Winnipeg, Chris. Cody Fajardo, it's almost like he uses that to motivate himself. Yes. He uses those poor performances, those bounces that don't go his way to motivate him. But the Saskatchewan Roughriders, plain and simple, are going to need a break or 4 in order to beat the Winnipeg Blue Bombers in the West Final. You mentioned the loss in Toronto a few minutes ago.
Yeah.
To me, Chris, that loss in Toronto was the best thing that happened to this Blue Bombers team. Sure, they lost to Montreal and Calgary to finish the regular season.
We didn't have their roster yet.
Reality speaking is this Blue Bombers team lost one game. They went into Toronto.
Yes.
Toronto did not back down. They said, we are going to punch you in the mouth, run it right down the gut. And they did, and they won. And it was a close game, but, the Toronto Argonauts got the best of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. It'll be interesting to see if it's the Boatmen and the Blue and Gold in the 108th Grey Cup, because those storylines will be revisited. But my point is, that was a very good thing for the Blue Bombers to experience early in the year. When they were going up against Saskatchewan, the conversation was whoever wins this season series is probably going to win the division and have that game at home in a cold playoff atmosphere. And what happened? Winnipeg punched Saskatchewan in the mouth and didn't let up in the Labor Day Classic and the Banjo Bowl. They beat them up and down the field. We shouldn't forget how dominant those Blue Bombers wins were over Saskatchewan in September.
Well, I agree. I mean, they were basically out-schemed. And listening to Jason Moss, the offensive coordinator for Saskatchewan today, he was, I don't know, it's almost like they're doing this reverse psychology game. All he talked about was how good the Bombers were. He didn't talk about his game plan, what he thought he had to do. He was just like, we know we have to run the ball in bad weather. But those Bombers, that defense, my God, those ends, it was just, oh my God. I had to go get some shots. I thought I was getting diabetes. So much sugar coming through the camera. But
that's an interesting perspective that maybe it's some reverse psychology. That's the only way you're going to get into the Blue Bombers' heads.
Well, they love playing the underdog. And that's what I guarantee they're saying. He said he's telling him how important, and that's Dickinson telling him how important this game is. And you don't have to tell players this. When you go to that, it's a different feel when you go to the room tomorrow. Because you're looking around and you're saying, we're supposed to win if I'm Winnipeg. But having said that, if we don't win today, we pack our garbage bags tomorrow. That's the mentality you have to have. And it's there. Every player knows it. And that's the thing that elevates the game, because every mistake now puts a different value on that game. It could be a huge mistake that ends up costing you. Where it's a regular season, you lose the game. You go to practice next week and you're still playing. Right. This is where they become more important.
Well, I think that was interesting when you mentioned Saskatchewan saying this is our last practice in Regina, because, you either go to Hamilton for the Grey Cup or you go home. For the Blue Bombers, it would be, for either team, it would be a quick turnaround to go meet the winner of Hamilton and Toronto. I want to get your thoughts, Chris, on the Ticats and the Argos and who might come out in that game, a game that, according to the odds makers, is a much closer one to call.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I mean, you look at it, right? I mean, Toronto beat them 3-1 during the 4 games they met this year. Having said that, they have that huge debacle right now with McLeod, Bethel Thompson, and the Raptors game and the COVID situation. And, why is he only getting 2 days when before, guys were, Stafford was getting a week and he couldn't play in the game. And now they're saying, the league saying, well, no, the protocol is different now because majority of the players are vaccinated now, so it's not a huge an issue. He has to get tested before he goes.
All of that is a huge can of worms, right? Well, we could do an hour on that ourselves.
Oh, I know. But here's the thing. Yeah, I don't want to get into that, but I'll tell you what I find. So your quarterback is not running the offense till game time. He's on Zoom calls now.
Yeah.
But so Pipkin's getting a lot of reps in Toronto. Toronto's got a good defense, man. I like their defense. Mwamba,
Sean Oakman,
of course. They have a good team, and I think, and that's why I'm looking at Hamilton. If Toronto, and I watched Hamilton's defensive line just beat up on Montreal's O-line, but having said that, I don't think Toronto's O-line is as bad as Montreal's. I think Toronto has a great chance to win this football game. I don't really know who I want. I'm actually kind of hoping for pinball and Toronto. I think it'll be a great game. But then again, part of me, from the romantic side of me, would love to see the rematch, Hamilton and Winnipeg, assuming we take care of our business here. But you're right.
Imagine those storylines in Hamilton. Hamilton in the game, trying to get redemption for being the favorite in the 107th Grey Cup and losing handily to the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Like, that would be really something. The way I see it, Chris, I agree with you. Montreal's offensive line, probably much more suspect than Toronto's. Jagira Davis was an absolute monster in the East semifinal. He was so good. Jeremiah Mazzoli, I think, will probably pay better than he did a few weeks ago when Hamilton lost to Toronto.
And remember that he's playing pretty good lately, and he never played last year. It was Dane Evans.
Right.
They've got a two-headed monster at quarterback if Mazzoli struggles, but he hasn't. He's had that one bad game As you mentioned, I think they got smoked by Saskatchewan. I don't remember. But anyway, they had a bad game. I think he could be, when I'm looking at that, to me, it's always about the quarterbacks anyway. But I think Mazzoli is really going to be the guy. Can he compete with, and there's going to be McLeod Bethel Thompson. He's going to be there anyway. So, I look at what these guys have done and how they played. The thing you got to take into consideration again is discipline. Huge. Saskatchewan is the most penalized team. Used to be Montreal now, and I know Kahari Jones just got an earful from Danny Wachocho, the GM, saying, you're not. We're not saying you're coming back. We're not saying you're not. But this team needs to be. He's too nice. I love Kahari, great guy, but he's too nice. You got to start setting the standard and say, hey, you know what? We'll hit you in a pocketbook where it hurts. So that's just my rant on that. But I'm just thinking right now, penalties. When I look at Saskatchewan and they're number 9. They take out 148 penalties, over 1,200 yards. Then you look conversely, Bombers, number 1, least amount of penalties. That comes into play. Penalties. You get a big play, and all of a sudden you get a hold, and you get a big play, you get a blocker from behind. It's just crazy. So, Dickinson, if I'm him, I'm talking to those players and say, guys, play smart. You got to, and think about it now. If the field gets slippery with the snow coming down, and you're trying to get a position on a guy to block, say, on a special teams return, sometimes you just end up hitting the guy in the back, and, boy, that could be costly. They always say, if you can't hit him, leave him. That was the old montage, I don't know if that's a word, but I'm starting to get Walbyisms again. Making my own vocabulary up again.
It's playoff time, Chris.
I know.
That's what everybody pays to hear from you.
Well.
You mentioned something, and I wanted to remember to mention it. When it comes to the field conditions here in Winnipeg, I've been watching closely for 2 weeks. Wade Miller has effectively put an army to work to clear the snow and ice and everything that's built up around IG Field. The building, the fan experience, it's all going to be in tip-top shape. Yeah. And the field, because if you've been here in southern Manitoba, the snow has come, it's frozen, it's melted, it's frozen, it's wreaked havoc on a lot. Every day I've gone to IG Field for 2 weeks, the field looks perfect. They have kept it pristine. It is not going to be frozen. It is not going to be wet. It is not going to be icy.
I'll get carried away.
Look, the snow could fall.
Yeah.
But it would be worse if this was a frozen field for a week.
For sure.
It's been good for
But they've had good
now.
because we've had above average weather, too. We've had beautiful weather. Right. Now, you talked about that. If it gets snowing, we get the heavy, as you say, 50 to 70K winds coming from the north. Well, that snow can get pretty hard pretty quickly. So
I'm just saying an inch below the surface, it's not going to be rock solid it could have been.
I agree with you. It's better than it could be for sure. Yeah. And I think you're right. Kudos to Wade Miller for doing that. I know that you always want to take that aspect out of the game, right? Don't make the field conditions control your game. Because the Bombers, I can tell you right now, they're going to come out and pound the heck out of the football. Yeah. Whether it's Harris, whether it's Augustine. And you better get used to seeing Augustine, because I tell you right now, he ain't going to be here next year.
Oh, you think big free agent deal?
I think he's going to be gone. I just think he's too good to be a backup. And I think unless something happens with Andrew Harris or something like that, there's going to be teams. He's from Ontario. I can see Toronto, Hamilton, somebody going out and saying, hey, we'll pay a load of money. This guy he should be a starting running back. I feel that strongly after watching him run the football.
Yeah, no, you won't get an argument from me. He just finishes runs. He runs the right way. And while he might not have the same physical skills of an Andrew Harris or a Brady Oliveira, he plays like he does. Yeah. Should work to the Winnipeg Blue Bombers' advantage. Chris, the Western Final is going to be, no doubt, an electric atmosphere, prairie rivalry, near capacity crowd expected. Yeah. It's going to be a special day. But we would be remiss if we didn't mention how special this game is going to be for the new Ring of Honor inductee for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Bob Irving, the legendary broadcaster on 680 CJOB, calling his final game after an illustrious career. His name will go up very close to yours, Chris, on the Ring of Honor and across from the Bob Irving Media Center in the Two Jacks press box. A special day for that as well. I'm going to be listening closely pregame and postgame. Yes. Bob is somebody who I have looked up to my entire life. When I'm a kid, listening to those games, going to those games, driving there and listening to that iconic voice talk Blue Bombers football, you can't help but hear that voice. And like even today, it kind of gives me, this weird feeling, because I go to work every day and it's ho-hum. It's your day job. It's been mine for 10 years. To hear Bob's voice, he could be saying anything. It reminds you, it makes you feel Winnipeg Blue Bombers football. And, stating the obvious here, he is going to be beyond missed in this community, but no doubt will still be around and active and, definitely still involved in a lot of things.
Well, well-deserved retirement. After 47 years covering the Bombers, he's done it. I mean, you're right. You hit it on the head. I used to listen to him when I could be in any room in the house and I wouldn't even know what I'm listening, but I hear his voice and I knew where I am. Yeah. And he brings that, he's got a very unique way of talking. It's almost like you're sitting across from him at a table and he's talking to you over a cold one. And that's what I like. I've had the opportunity to share a couple cold ones with him during the years. And I don't think you know what he is? He is the Kenny Plain of broadcasting. And I use Kenny Plain because Kenny Plain was a guy that I always want to emulate. He's just a great ambassador for the CFL, for the league, for Winnipeg. Just a pure gentleman, and that's what Bob Knuckles reminds me of. He's just always got time for you, always happy to see you. I'll be talking about him tomorrow on my little pregame on the Jumbotron. I'll definitely be mentioning him. And actually, hey, I got to pump a little air up your backside here. You're getting some mentions here a lot. I'm actually reading a lot about the guys saying, who would you like to see? And, they're all going. I tell you right now, I probably saw 20 of them come up on Twitter. What about that Darrin bombing guy?
Well, no, look, I'll cut you off there, Chris.
We're tired of Kevin Carey Walby all the time.
No, yeah, right. I'm carrying Chris Walby. No, I don't think so. But
I know, way too much.
This is the thing. I don't envy whomever is going to be calling Blue Bombers games moving forward, because those are shoes that will never be filled. The thing that's always stood out to me about Bob Irving and his call is that he calls the game, kind of to your point about like across the table, just having a conversation. Nobody calls a game like him. His delivery, his voice, that's one thing. But what he says and how he says it, the way he communicates, his cadence in it all, it's truly unique. And that is so rare in today's day and age, where everybody wants to sound like Al Michaels, or everybody wants to sound, like these guys on the big American networks. Bob became a legend from small town Saskatchewan to here in Winnipeg. An amazing thing to me, Chris, is the first game he ever called was a Winnipeg Blue Bombers game. The first football game he ever called was a Blue Bombers game. So he learned on his feet. And I think it shows in a truly special, unique, and one-of-a-kind play-by-play call that, will never, ever be replaced.
No, and it's funny you say that, and I know you're being modest to yourself, and I appreciate that. But you're right. I will say this: the guy that has to follow in those footsteps, it's almost like it's a no-win situation, right? Because you're always going to be compared. Right. I listened to a Hal Anderson show. I think it might have been middle of the week, this past week, and they had an hour, and it was all about Bob. Yeah. And people were calling in, and Hal Anderson does such a great job. He's having to be polite because guys want to tell a story and they want to talk for 20 minutes. He's like, "Okay, get to your point, caller. Get to your point." Right. But all of it was a showering of love for Bob Irving. And I know Bob. If you know Bob, and we know Bob, we're lucky enough to be fortunate to know him. He's a modest guy. He's humble.
Yes.
He's not one of these guys that's walking around saying, "Hey, tell me how good I am. Pop me in the back. Pump me up." I don't need that.
He doesn't want to hear it.
And he doesn't want it. I think he's happy that him and his wife Day are going to go spend a lot more time with the grandkids. They're going to be at the cabin, golfing, and all stuff he loves.
Yeah, lots more travel. He's looking.
Well, he wants to do travel, and listen, he's not a spring chicken either right now. You know what I mean? He's getting up there, and he's the first one to say, "Listen, I've had some health issues in the past. As much as I'm going to miss it, I'm going to relish having a summer."
Yeah,
because you and I know you're at the stadium every day, and that's a sacrifice. And think about that. So you've been doing it 5-6 years, or even
none of us would trade it for the world.
No,
I wouldn't trade it for the world. If I got to miss Manitoba summer because I got to work more than say in the winter, it's worth it to me.
Well, I know. And you think about him though, 47 years of doing this.
Yeah.
And you've been doing it probably 10 now because we worked 6 years TSN. 7. I don't know how you.
Well, I remember Westy, like when we were doing Blue and Gold Game Day on TSN Radio, that Westy would say, well, he went from playing right into broadcasting, and like he still never had a summer. So, we wish Bob health, happiness,
absolutely.
longevity,
Yes.
and
100%.
just a fantastic, well-deserved retirement. Being such a humble guy and not wanting that praise. It's funny how life works sometimes. I'm still a relatively young man, Chris, but a little piece of wisdom I picked up is that, you don't always get what you expect in life. And for Bob, my wish for him is that he begins to enjoy the stories being told to him after 5 decades of telling the Blue Bombers stories to all of us. So an opportunity for him to, maybe hear some stories instead of, being the one to tell them.
I think that it would be a phenomenal idea if somebody out there, some sort of an author, and I know a couple guys, and that they would write a book about the adventures of Bob Knuckles Irving, because I guarantee he's got, this is a guy that worked with Cactus Jack Wells. He worked with Don Whitman. He's worked with a ton of, Brian Williams, who just retired the other day too. I mean, I got a chance with him, right? From CBC.
Good times and bad, right? Like your trio of Grey Cup championships to those, really down years in the 90s and 2000s and late 2010s to, again, a crescendo to maybe the best Winnipeg Blue Bombers team we've seen in a generation for his final game on Sunday.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be, I can't even, and I won't even justify by saying, I just don't understand how it would feel. I mean, he knows going into that booth tomorrow to call that game after he's getting, honored at the Ring of Honor, that this is it.
Yeah.
You almost wonder if there's going to be some tears shed. He's had a great run with all the guys he's worked, from Joe Pop to, Dougie Brown, who does it now. To me, it's just one of those things where I'm really, that's why I say I want a sold out crowd to give Bob and that's not even, it's hard to give a guy that kind of acknowledgement in one day. Right. 47 and wrapped into one day. Yeah. He'll go. I'm pretty sure. I don't even know if he's in the Bomber Hall of Fame. I know he's in the Media Hall of Fame.
Yeah. Well, he's been selecting who goes in the Blue Bombers Hall of Fame for so many years.
Yeah.
So I think maybe they'll repay him. Yeah. They'll repay him that honor.
When they have that dinner next year, because we didn't have it this year, right? They always have the Bomber dinner in September. Yeah. Maybe that's the thing they do, a Bob Irving special night. I'm sure the Bombers are, and I know this, but. The Bombers, he loves going on cruises. Mm-hmm. So, if I'm thinking the Bombers, if they're doing something really special, they give him a ticket to anywhere he wants to go, right? Here's a trip for you and your wife, your grandkid, whatever. Go on a cruise, hopefully when the situation with the health gets better for everybody, you get to go enjoy something. But anyway, that's, I thank you for doing that, DB, because I think this broadcast wouldn't be right if we did not acknowledge the man, the legend in Bob.
No question. Hearty congratulations. All of the praise is deserved to an absolute class act in Bob. Last thought from me, Chris, is that, for the first 8, 9, 10 years of my career in journalism and broadcasting and sports broadcasting, I was Bob Irving's competition from a competing radio station. Yes. This year, Bob and I had some fantastic conversations. I can speak firsthand. He is a first-class man and, somebody who, we look forward to still seeing a ton of, but man, he's going to be missed. You're right, Chris. The things we do on Bonfire Sports or on TSN Radio or CFL.ca or wherever it might be, we do it because of the trailblazers like Bob Irving. So big tip of the hat and looking forward to his call on Sunday.
Yeah, well said, man. So all you people out there watching this show, and thank you for watching this one, basically get your radios out. And I heard there's, I think it was Hal Anderson who said that there's been a recent buy-up of all transistor radios. Guys are bringing to the game so they can actually listen to Bob's call while they're at the stadium, which I think is just ultimately the coolest thing.
Because if you're listening on your phone, it's going to be like 20, 30-second delay, right? You got to listen on like a real handheld
So some guys are buying up all these old transistor radios now, getting into the AM dial, basically, here you go, Bob. And I wish that, they'd all hand them up, hold them up in the stadium, and we just have a big cheer about that. But I'm looking forward to it, buddy.
Well, I got my radio. What happened to it? I had my radio here, and you can see it's an old dial radio. I always have it on 680. So when I know the coach's show is on or whatever, I flick it on and can listen to Bob's dulcet tones call a football game. Chris, Well, I think we can just leave it there because, this game means a lot to a lot of people. It means a lot to Mike O'Shea and Bob Irving and all those players on the field and everybody in the Blue Bombers organization, to you, to me, and all the fans out there. I'm looking forward to doing this again next week following, assumedly, a Blue Bombers victory. I try to be impartial. But really expecting Winnipeg to beat Saskatchewan in the Western Final. So, a reminder to everybody out there, be sure to like and subscribe, ring the bell. This is what's key. If you're on YouTube right now, ring the little bell icon. We're going to be at Grey Cup, me and Nick Kowalski, all week long. We're going to be in Hamilton, boots on the ground. Chris, you're going to join us as well. I have no doubt we're going to get you involved. When we have new content up, you will get an alert on your phone. You just tap it, boom. You got Bonfire Sports right in the palm of your hand. Available on all your favorite podcast platforms. We'll have all that up as well. But you got a score prediction, Chris, as we head out, or do you want to hit your keys to the game? I didn't even ask you for your keys.
No, I'm just showing this out here, man. Where are you? Right here. Bonfire Sports.
Yep. Oh, careful. My phone number's on that.
If you get a chance, when you run into Darrin, you get the card off him. I got a few. And you actually just put your phone on camera. I learned this yesterday. I'm not the most technically gifted guy. And it goes right to the website. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So, get that done. My keys, buddy, are simple, buddy. Number one, obviously, just protect the football. The weather's going to be, don't let the weather dictate the game. Defense, I'm just going to go this. Keep Fajardo in the pocket. Don't let him beat you with his legs. And a special teams, listen, this is one of those games you really got to have a great job containing. That Jamal Morrow for Saskatchewan, and we got Janari and Grant back, which I think will be a big bonus for us. Hopefully Sergio kicks the heck out of the pigskin, and we come away with this, and they celebrate. And listen, I really do believe that we should be favored. We should win, and I pray to God we do. But that's it. I mean, I'm being a homer on that because I want the boys. This is my blood there. I want them to go.
We love your keys to the game here on Bonfire Sports. Chris, as I tend to do, I'll add one thought to your keys to the game.
Sure.
In my mind, the winner of this football game will be the team that is right between the ears. Whoever has the mental approach the right way is going to win this game. Cold weather, playoffs on the line, win or go home, prairie rivalry, two very talented teams. You can almost throw that all out the window. If you want this game and you play it the right way, that's what's going to win. That's what's going to punch your ticket to the 108th Grey Cup.
I'll just say one more thing. This defense the Bombers have, I went and said, how do they do at home? Well, they're 7-0 at home. Haven't lost a home game. Their defense has only given up 8.8 points a game at home. That's incredible. And we know what they've done in the second half, right? So this is going to be a fantastic game, and I really hope that all the people out there, 30,000 plus, get to enjoy this because this is a team that I believe is a legacy. I think they have from 2019. You think of all the garbage we went through in 2020 with no league, to come back, to keep a lot of the veterans you brought and bring new guys in here, these young kids like Dietrich Nichols and DeAndre Alford and all these other guys that have made major impacts in here. Kudos to the Bombers, and I just don't want to see it end on a sour note tomorrow.
No, I'm glad you mentioned DeAndre Alford. If you haven't yet, click over on YouTube or on your podcast app, my one-on-one conversation with the Blue Bombers' most outstanding rookie in 2021. He's really gone from small school to an illustrious stage here in the Canadian Football League. Thanks for this, Chris. Enjoy the game. We're going to see you at IG Field on the Jumbotron.
You betcha.
Looking good, by the way, buddy. Looking really nice with that bee hat on.
Yeah, I like that, man. Like I said, it was really nice to meet that guy in the McDonald's parking lot. So it was just very special. Very covert. He just kind of snuck in my truck.
He didn't even buy you a coffee at McDonald's.
I actually guess. Did you see where I went, Ray? I had to get something to eat. I had to pick up my wife getting a tattoo. She's very happy with it, by the way. Got our dog's name on her ankle. So
nice little Christmas present for her. That's nice.
Yeah, she liked it. So, I went to McDonald's and I met you there. And then I went through and I said, I got to buy something. But I got to say this. What's going on with the price of hamburgers? What is going on, man? I bought a hamburger and a McChicken and it was like $12. And they wouldn't let me pay with empties. So I don't know what's going on.
Man, oh man, that's what was in the back of your truck. I was wondering what that smell was.
Oh, you loved it, man. You tried to peek around. All right, buddy. God bless, man.
Yep.
We'll talk to you soon, Bob.